What if I told you that how you choose what you want to have for breakfast this morning reveals everything about your relationship with control? That your decision to scroll social media or to call your mother, to stay late at work or to leave on time, to say yes to that social invitation when you're exhausted, these aren't just random choices. They're either building the life you want or the life that's happening to you. In the last episode, we redefined leadership as how you show up for others in the pivotal moments of your life. Today, we're turning inward. We're looking at the thousands of invisible choices you make when no one is watching, because those choices are what create the person who shows up in those pivotal moments. I'm Dr. Cara. Here's what I've observed after working with thousands of people. Most of us are living on autopilot. We make the same choices repeatedly without questioning whether they align with who we want to be or the life we want to create. This autopilot living creates what I call decision debt. Every time you make a reactive choice instead of an intentional one, you take on a small bit of debt against your energy, your clarity, and your purpose. It doesn't feel like much in the moment, but over time, the interest compounds. The result? You wake up feeling spiritually, emotionally, and physically withdrawn, suffering from a bankruptcy of intention. You immediately check your phone each morning, even though you know it starts your day with anxiety. You say yes to commitments that drain you because saying no feels uncomfortable. You choose the familiar path even when it's no longer serving you, simply because it's easier than being intentional. This decision debt creates a disconnect between your values and your actions, between your intentions and your reality. You might value health, but consistently choose convenience. You might prioritize relationships, but regularly choose work over connection. You might want peace, but make choices that create chaos. Here's what changes everything. Every decision is a vote for who you're becoming. And when you learn to make those votes consciously, you reclaim authorship of your own story. Let me share a story that illustrates how powerful conscious decision making can be, even in the smallest moments. Last year, I was going through an incredibly demanding season at work. I had back-to-back calls, speaking engagements, and deadlines that seemed to multiply overnight. My default pattern had become grabbing whatever food was fastest, skipping workouts because I didn't have time, and staying up late trying to catch up on everything I hadn't finished during the day. One particular Thursday, I was rushing between calls and I realized I hadn't eaten anything substantial since coffee that morning. My usual response would have been to go grab something quick and eat while working, but something made me take a pause. I used my framework right there in that moment. Receive. I noticed I was hungry, irritated, and feeling scattered. My body was telling me I needed nourishment, not just fuel. Perceive. I realized that my pattern of eating while distracted wasn't just about time efficiency. It was me trying to control multiple things at once instead of being present for any of them. I was choosing urgency over intention. Respond. I made a different choice. I closed my laptop and went to the kitchen and spent 15 minutes making a simple meal. I ate it without multitasking, just focusing on nourishing my body. That 15-minute decision changed the entire trajectory of my day. I returned to work feeling centered instead of frantic. During my next call, I was more present and effective. I made better decisions all afternoon because I started with one intentional choice. This insight for me was profound. In my kitchen with my daughter in the last episode, self-leadership was about creating space for connection. But here, in the middle of a chaotic workday, self-leadership was about claiming space for my own well-being. It was a radical act of choosing my own sustainability over the tyranny of the urgent. That moment wasn't really about food. It was about recognizing that I had been accumulating decision debt all week, making choices from reactive patterns instead of conscious intention, letting external urgency dictate my internal experience. This brings us to how the methodology transforms decision making from reactive to intentional, especially helping you pay down your decision debt and start building what I call intentional capital. Most decisions happen so quickly, we don't even recognize them as choices. We're on autopilot, driven by habit, social expectations, or whatever feels the easiest in that moment. Yet conscious decision making creates space between impulse and action. Receive means pausing long enough to acknowledge that you're at a choice point. Instead of automatically reaching for your phone when you feel bored, you notice the impulse and recognize it as a decision moment. You're checking the emotional notification. What's really happening here? Perceive means examining what's driving your choice. Are you deciding from fear or from intention? From habit or from values? From external pressure or from internal wisdom? This is where you ask, what am I trying to control here? What am I avoiding? What am I missing? What do I actually need right now? You're like that pilot in the holding pattern, creating space for clarity rather than forcing a reactive landing. Respond means making a choice aligned with who you want to be, not just what feels easiest in the moment. This doesn't mean every choice has to be difficult. Sometimes the values aligned choice is also the easy one, but it's conscious rather than automatic. The beautiful thing about applying this to daily decisions is that you start building your intentional capital. Each conscious choice strengthens your capacity for the next one and pays dividends in clarity, energy, and authentic confidence. Let me give you a scenario that a lot of people face regularly. You've had a long, stressful day at work, and your phone buzzes with an invitation to grab drinks with friends. You're torn because you genuinely enjoy spending time with these people, but you're also exhausted and you know you need to rest. The reactive approach, the one that accumulates decision debt, might be to automatically say yes because you don't want to disappoint anyone, or automatically say no because you always choose work over social connection. Either way, you're not making a conscious choice. You're following a pattern and paying the emotional interest later. What if you applied intentional decision making? Receive. Notice both your genuine desire to connect with friends and your body's need for rest. You acknowledge that this is actually a choice point, not just something that's happening to you. Perceive. You examine what's driving each option. Is the yes coming from fear of missing out or from genuine desire for connection? Is the no coming from exhaustion or from a pattern of isolation? You might realize you're afraid that saying no makes you a bad friend, or that you often use social plans to avoid processing stress. Respond from this place of awareness. You make a choice that honors both your needs and your values. Maybe suggest a shorter meetup. Maybe you express that you need a rest tonight but would love to plan something for the weekend. Maybe you realize connecting with friends is exactly what will restore your energy and you choose to go. The specific choice matters less than the fact that it's a conscious choice that's aligned with your authentic needs rather than reactive patterns. You're building intentional capital instead of accumulating decision debt. I want you to practice for the next week the decision pause. Every time you're about to make a choice that affects your energy, your values, or your relationships, pause just for 10 seconds and ask yourself one question. Am I choosing from intention or autopilot? Start with small decisions. When you reach for your phone, pause and ask, what am I actually seeking right now? Connection, distraction, information? When you're about to say yes to a request, pause and ask, am I saying yes from genuine willingness or from a fear of disappointing someone? When you're choosing what to eat, pause and ask, what does my body actually need right now? You don't have to make perfect choices. The goal is to simply bring consciousness to the decisions that you usually make automatically. Notice how different it feels to choose with intention rather than habit. You might discover that you check your phone when you're avoiding a task. You might realize you say yes to things you don't want to do because you're afraid of conflict. You might notice you choose comfort foods when you're stressed out, not because you're hungry. This awareness itself starts paying down your decision debt because you can't change what you don't see. Here's what I've learned about the relationship between small decisions and major life changes. You don't transform your life through one big decision. You transform it through thousands of small choices that accumulate intentional capital over time. The person who chooses to read for 10 minutes instead of scrolling social media is building a different relationship with learning. The person who chooses to have difficult conversations instead of avoiding them is building emotional courage. The person who chooses to rest when they need it instead of pushing through is building sustainable energy. Here's the part that actually surprised me. When you start making small decisions consciously, it becomes easier to make big decisions with clarity. The practice of checking in with your values on daily choices prepares you for life's major crossroads. I've worked with clients who started by simply choosing to eat lunch away from their desk and ended up having the clarity to leave a toxic work environment. The daily practice of intentional choice making revealed what truly mattered to them and gave them the courage to act on it. This is why I say that how you make small decisions shapes who you become. You're either practicing reactive living, accumulating decision debt, or intentional living, building intentional capital with every choice. When you start living from conscious choice rather than autopilot reaction, several things begin to shift. Your decision debt starts clearing. That spiritual and emotional bankruptcy gets replaced by a growing sense of alignment and energy. You're no longer fighting against your own choices. You're supported by them. Your relationships improve because you're showing up authentically rather than performing what you think others want. Your stress decreases because you're proactively creating the conditions that you need rather than constantly reacting to circumstances. Most importantly, you start trusting yourself. When you consistently make choices aligned with your values, you build confidence in your own judgment. You stop second guessing yourself because you know your decisions come from awareness rather than impulse. This trust becomes the foundation for bigger life changes. You're more willing to take meaningful risks because you trust your ability to navigate whatever comes. You're less afraid of making mistakes because you know you can course correct consciously. Learning to make conscious choices is preparation for everything else we'll explore in this series, because the same awareness that helps you choose what to eat for breakfast is what you'll use to navigate conflicts with your partner, guide your children through challenges, and make career decisions that align with your purpose. During our next episode, we're diving into one of the most challenging arenas for conscious choice making: parenting. I'll share how the same reactive patterns that show up in daily decisions get amplified when you're trying to raise tiny humans while staying human yourself, and how one parenting moment taught me about the power of grace. For this week, practice the decision pause with one small daily choice. Maybe it's how you start your morning, what you do during breaks, or how you end your day. Bring consciousness to one decision you usually make automatically. Here's what I'm curious about. What area of your life has the most decision debt? Where do you find yourself making choices on autopilot that don't align with who you want to be? Share in the comments, because naming our patterns is the first step to transforming them. And remember, every choice is a vote for who you're becoming. Make sure you're voting for the person you actually want to be.